Chapter 46-54. Father Pan and Pan Ning's hearts skipped a beat when they heard this. They looked at Fengjiu in unison. Fengjiu looked at the silly little boy in front of her and thought of her brother's son. She chuckled and asked, "Do you know what cultivation is? You can be very powerful if you cultivate. If I cultivate, I might be able to beat Mu Qin." He looked at Mu Qin and Mu Yu who were walking towards his mother. He wanted to beat Mu Qin because he was a boy and older than Mu Qin, but he couldn't beat him. Fengjiu's smile widened at the child's childish words. She reached out and placed her hand on the top of the little boy's head. She raised her eyebrows in surprise and smiled. "I didn't expect you to be a martial artist." Pan Ning couldn't help but ask, "Madam, my son. He has the body of a mystic cultivator, so he can cultivate. His muscles and bones are not bad," Fengjiu said with a smile. Then. Father Pan suddenly became nervous. He was so excited that he couldn't speak. "Aunt Feng, then can I cultivate with Sister Yu and Mu Qin?" Bo Qing looked at her with shining eyes. His little face was full of excitement. Feng Jiu smiled. "What they cultivate is not suitable for you. However, if you really want to step into the cultivation world, I can find you a good place to go." As she spoke, she looked at Pan Ning and Pan Fu. The two didn't need her to say more. Pan Ning immediately said, "If Madam can send my son to cultivate, the Pan family will be very grateful." He quickly stood up and bowed. Yes, Father Pan said. Seeing this, Feng Jiu looked at them and said, "Do you know that the cultivation world is also cruel? You won't be able to live peacefully after entering the cultivation world. If he chooses to stay in the mortal world, I think that the descendants of the Pan family will be able to live a carefree life and will even have a high position. However, if he goes to the cultivation world, he can only start from the lowest point. Perhaps he will be killed before he can grow up and die in a battle with others. Then, do you still want him to set foot in the cultivation world?" Father Pan and Pan Ning were stunned. Perhaps they knew this would happen, but when the cruelty of the situation was placed in front of them, they didn't know how to choose. If they allowed Bo Qing to leave with them to cultivate, and if he could grow up, the Pan family would also become a family with immortals in the future. Perhaps many years later, the descendants of the Pan family would also be able to step into the cultivation world because of Bo Qing. However, Bo Qing was still so young. How could they make such a decision for him? Bo Qing looked at his grandfather, then at his father. Finally, he said resolutely, "I want to go. I want to become very powerful. Aunt Feng, can I go with you?" Bowen walked up and asked Fengjiu. Fengjiu looked at him and reached out a hand. Then, he shook his head. "You don't have a spiritual root, and you're not a mystical cultivator. You can't become an immortal. You can only be a mortal." In the mortal world, there were very few children with spiritual roots. It was normal that they couldn't detect his spiritual roots and mystical qi constitution. Chapter 46-55. "Mother, let's bring big brother Fu Qing with us. We can cultivate together and grow up together in the future," Yu said with a smile. She looked at Fu Qing and Pan Ning as if she had thought of something. In the end, she asked with some distress, "Big brother Fu Qing, are you willing to leave your father and mother? If you leave with us, what will you do if you can't see them in the future?" Hearing this, Fu Qing was startled and seemed to be in a daze. He looked at his father and muttered, "I can't see them in the future. Then when I grow up, can't I come back?" Fengjiu smiled and said, "Of course, when you are strong enough, you can naturally come back." Fu Qing turned to look at his father, his little face full of seriousness, and said, "Father, when I grow up and become very powerful, I will come back to see you." Hearing this, Pan Ning had an indescribable feeling in his heart. In the end, he could only sigh and solemnly bow to Fingzhou, saying, "Madam, please bring Fu Qing with you. Whether it is a blessing or a curse, it will depend on his own good fortune. When we leave, let him come with us. Don't worry, I will find a good place for him to go." Fengzhou smiled and didn't say anything else. What she said before was just to test them. Since she could take this little boy away, she would naturally find a good place for him so that he could learn things and grow up safely. Therefore, when this decision was made, the Pan family also discussed this matter. However, this matter was not known to anyone else, only the masters of the Pan family knew. According to Fingzhou's suggestion, not long after they left, let the Pan family release the news that Fu Qing had passed away due to a sudden illness. She wanted them to act as if Fu Qing didn't exist here. Only this would be a good thing for the Pan family. In the next few days, Fingzhou said goodbye to the Pan family when Pan Hong's legs could slightly stand. When they came, they caused quite a commotion, but when they left quietly. Fu Qing's mother, Pan Ning's wife, watched her son leave with them and cried until she fainted in Pan Ning's arms. She didn't know if she would have the chance to see her child again. On the spaceship, Fu Qing sat at the side wiping his tears and sniffling. Looking at the place getting farther and farther away, he secretly decided that in the future, he would definitely come back. He would definitely come back to see his father and mother, as well as his great-grandfather and grandfather. "Brother Fu Qing, here is a fruit to eat, don't cry." Yu gave him a spirit fruit. "A man don't cry shameful." Mu Chen's expression was still cool, but he seemed to know how it felt to leave one's parents. Hence, although his delicate little face was tense, he softened his tone and said, "My mother will find you a good master. When that time comes, you just have to practice hard. When you grow up and become stronger, you can come back whenever you want. What's there to cry about?" "I just want to cry. Don't worry about me. I just want to cry, not bleed." He wiped his tears and turned his back to Mu Chen. Hao walked over and didn't say anything. He just sat down and quietly looked at the sky outside. Chapter 46-56. She looked at the masked man sitting cross-legged in the corner of the bow. She saw that his aura was calm and he was sitting there with his eyes closed. There was a small barrier around him that protected his body. During this period of time, she also realized that he would find a place to sit cross-legged sometimes. It didn't look like he was cultivating, but more like, his soul was out of his body. Thinking back to what he had said earlier, that this was not his body, and that he had only borrowed this body to come here, he was even more certain of his guess that his soul had left his body. Half a year. After half a year, the children would leave with him. Thinking of this, she took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. After a pause, she sat up and looked at her 3 children. "You guys, come here." She waved at the 3 of them. When the 3 children saw her, they went to their mother's side. Yu threw herself into her arms, while Mu Chen and Hao stood at the side. Mother, what kind of master are you looking for Brother Buqing?" Yu looked up and asked in her arms. Fengzhou stroked her little head and smiled gently. "He's a mystic, so naturally, I'll find him a mystic to be his master. Don't worry. I'll find him a good one." "Mother, uncle is a mystic," Mu Chen said. Hearing this, Fengzhou raised an eyebrow and looked at him. "You mean to send him to your uncle and let him accept him as a disciple?" Actually, she wanted to send Pan Buqing to a sect. As long as she said the word, no matter which sect he was sent to, he would be well groomed. "Isn't that good?" Mu Chen asked with doubt in his eyes. Fengzhou shook her head and said, "It's not that it's not good, but it's not very suitable. Because he's your uncle, I can't make the decision to accept a disciple for him. So, I'm going to send Butching to a sect and find him a good master. As long as his talent is outstanding, he's willing to work hard, he will definitely be successful in the future. Yes, yes. When Muchin heard her say this, he thought that his mother had her own considerations and that it must be for Butching's good, so he didn't say much. Mother, where are we going now? Hao asked. Let's go to Xianyuan Empire, to your grandfather's place. Fengzhou said, ever since we found you, we only informed your grandfather. We haven't brought you to see him yet. This time, we're going to stay there for a while. If she sent the children away, he would have fewer chances to see them in the future. This time, she was bringing them back so that they could accompany him. Moreover, she had to find a chance to talk to him about Mose. Putting away her thoughts, she looked at the 3 children and said, the medicinal pills that mother gave you have pretty much been used up, right? What did he lack? Mother will find time to refine some more for you. Mother, we don't have any more medicinal pills to treat our internal injuries. Even Big Brother couldn't bear to use them last time. Let us use it. Yu hastily said. Mother, we're running out of medicine for external injuries, Muchin added. Hearing this, Fengzhou nodded, and, Mother understands. Then Mother will help you refine some more and distribute them to you. In the future, when they leave her side, it seems that she will have to refine more pills for them. He walked forward and said, let's talk inside. Hearing this, the Emperor of Xianyuan Kingdom was stunned for a moment. Then, he burst out laughing, that's right. Look at me. You guys came all the way here and you're asking me questions here. Come. Quick, follow me in. Are you guys hungry? I'll get the Imperial Kitchen to prepare some food for you. Then, have a good rest. The group entered the palace. Emperor Xuanyuan's face was full of smiles when they arrived. He got the Imperial Kitchen to prepare some food and the servants to tidy up the place for them to stay. Chapter 46-58. Have a seat. The Emperor of Xianyuan gestured. He looked at her and asked, did something happen to Mose? Actually, when he saw that his son did not return today and Fengzhou did not answer his question, he had a vague guess in his heart. However, he did not know what could have happened with his son's abilities. Fengzhou nodded and sat down on the chair. Father, before we found the children, something happened to Mose. It happened because of his advancement. Breakthrough. The Emperor of the Xianyuan Kingdom's heart sank. Something like a breakthrough was no small matter. It's like this. Fengzhou told him everything that happened that day. In the end, he said, my brother went back to the land that Mose controlled to investigate. On the day that something happened to Mose, the land shook greatly. However, his spiritual energy did not completely disappear. Hence, we guessed that he is not dead. We just don't know where he is now. Hearing this, the Emperor of Xianyuan sighed softly and said, we heard the sound of thunder from here. However, it was too far away. We did not receive any news and did not know that something had happened to him. He looked at Fengzhou and said with a heavy heart, who can say for sure that he is still alive under such heavenly lightning? Even if his spiritual energy did not completely disappear, it could be a matter of time. The heavenly lightning was so powerful that even he could not withstand it. No, I don't believe that he is dead. I don't believe that he no longer exists in this world. I would rather believe that he is recuperating somewhere. Fengzhou said firmly. He is my son. Why would I not want him to be alive? I'm just worried that if you have too much hope, you'll suffer a bigger blow in the future. It's good to have hope in your heart, but you have to be mentally prepared. You can't wait until the time comes when the hope in your heart is shattered and your beliefs can't hold on. Fengjiu remained silent and did not say a word. She knew that he said this for her own good and to prepare her mentally. However, she did not want to believe and would not believe that Mose did not exist in this world. He must still be alive. The Emperor of Xianyuan did not continue on this topic. Instead, he asked, "The children don't know yet, right? Are you not going to tell them?" "I haven't thought of how to tell them," Fengjiu said worriedly. "Although they are young, they are already sensible. If I tell them, I am worried that their small hearts will not be able to take it." Hearing this, he sighed softly and said, "The children are stronger than you think. Don't worry. Tell them. They are already sensible and they should know." "Father, actually, I have something else to tell you this time." Fengjiu looked at him. Tell me. I am listening." "What is it?" he asked. Fengjiu stretched out his hand and set up a soundproof barrier. Then, he said, "Mose is in trouble because someone from the immortal realm is pressuring us and wants to kill us. So, I am preparing to send the 3 children away. The masked man who came with us today is a powerful person from the immortal realm. He is." She carefully explained the seriousness of the matter to him and the decision she made. She hoped that he would understand. Chapter 46-59. "I'm not sure about the situation up there, but for now, that's right." She nodded. "Since you're not sure about the situation up there, how can you be sure that the children will grow up safely after you send them up there? And how can you be sure that the person who doesn't even want to tell us his name will really protect them?" The Emperor of Xianyuan Kingdom asked, unable to loosen his frown. After hearing Fengjiu's words, he became even more worried. "I've been observing him all this time, and I feel that this person is trustworthy. Besides that, there's another matter regarding you, Inside the palace, outsiders were unable to know what the 2 of them were talking about inside the barrier. At this time, because it was evening, the children were playing around in the palace. Especially Bo Qing, who had never seen such a beautiful palace, was very excited. "This place is so beautiful. Mu Chen, your grandfather is actually the emperor. That's really amazing," Bo Qing exclaimed. He didn't expect them to have such an identity. Mu Chen glanced at him and said, "Of course my grandfather is amazing, but my parents are even more amazing. They are the masters of heaven and earth, much more powerful than the emperor. In the future, I will also be as powerful as my parents, so you can't beat me." "I don't believe it. I will also be very powerful in the future. I will definitely beat you," Bo Qing said, unconvinced. "Brother Bo Qing, I'll take you to see the spirit beasts in the palace." Yu stepped forward and pulled his hand, saying, "My grandfather also has a red-crowned crane that can fly. I'll take you to see it." "Really? Okay. Let's go see it." When Bo Qing heard this, his eyes lit up and his little face was full of excitement. In an instant, he forgot about what had just happened. It could be said that other than secretly crying when he first left home for a day or 2, after a long time, he no longer cried when he thought of his parents and family. More often than not, he was attracted by new and interesting things. This was because during this time, he had seen many new and strange things and things. In the future, he might see more and know more. When Leng Hua and Leng Shuang saw them walking towards the spirit beast garden, they followed behind them unhurriedly. Although it was said that it was very safe and there wouldn't be any more people like the demon master appearing, they would still follow behind to protect him, just in case. After staying in the palace for 2 days, Fengjiu asked Du Fan to send Bo Qing to the sect that she, Yi Jing, and her brother had cultivated in before. Because there, other than spirit cultivators, there were also mystic cultivators. After thinking about it, she felt that sending Bo Qing there was the most suitable. On this day, Fengjiu watched the children say their goodbyes and felt a little uncomfortable. Therefore, after this farewell, it would be difficult for them to see each other again in the future. When you go there, you have to cultivate well. Don't just fight with others. Remember to run when you can't beat others. Mu Chen looked at the red-eyed Bo Qing and said stiffly. Sob, 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 I know. I'll miss you guys. When I become more powerful, I'll come and fight with you. At that time, I'll definitely be able to defeat you. He cried as he wiped his tears. The corner of Mu Chen's mouth twitched. Originally, he was still a little reluctant, but suddenly, it became subtle. He could only say with a straight face, I will wait. Chapter 46-60. Holding the dagger, Fu Qing wiped his tears and said, Yes, yes, I know. I will take good care of myself. You guys should take good care of yourselves too. Don't get lost again. Alright, it's getting late. Let's go. Du Fan stepped forward and patted Fu Qing's shoulder. He looked at Fengjiu and said, Master, I'll send him to the sect first. I'll come back when I'm done with the matter. Okay, go. Fengjiu gestured. He watched him take out the flying device and leave with 17 and Fu Qing. Only then did he look at the 3 children. Let's go back to the palace. During this period of time, accompany your grandfather well. Fengjiu stroked the children's heads and said. The 3 followed her inside. Yu Er asked, Mother, will we be able to see Fu Qing again in the future? Fengjiu held her hand and walked forward. She looked ahead and said, There's no such thing as an eternal banquet in the world. We meet when we are fated, and when we are not, we part ways. Let nature take its course. There's no need to be too deliberate. The 3 children listened and fell silent. After a while, they nodded. Yes, we understand. Mother, where's father? Mu Chen asked and looked up at her. You haven't told us where father went. Mother, did something happen to father? Fengjiu stopped in her tracks and her expression flickered. She lowered her head and looked at her son beside her. She revealed a gentle smile and reached out to stroke his hair. Hao and Yu were also looking at her, as if waiting for her answer. Thus, she looked at the palace fence not far away and said, Let's go there. I'll tell you guys. Thus, the 3 children followed her to the fence. When they saw her sitting on the fence, the 3 children imitated her and sat beside her. The 3 children's 6 eyes fell on her at the same time, waiting for her to tell them. A while ago, the weakening of the blood curse on your bodies was indeed related to your father. Something happened to him when he was advancing and we don't know where he is now. However, you don't have to worry, he will definitely be fine. Perhaps he is just recuperating somewhere and will come back to find us when his body recovers. Fengjiu only gave them a brief summary of the situation. Only she knew how dangerous it was, but she didn't want the children to think too much or worry too much, so she only gave them a brief summary. Even mother doesn't know where father is. Yu wrinkled her small face, then blinking her pair of worried eyes, she looked at her mother. Fengjiu smiled and rubbed her little head. Your father is very powerful, you don't have to worry about him. However, mother still has something to tell you 3. Mother, what's the matter? Hao asked. After a period of time, mother will send you to other places to learn and cultivate. Therefore, during this period of time, you must remember what mother taught you. Perhaps in the future, you will be able to use it. Mother wants to send us away. Where are we going? We don't want to learn and cultivate with mother. Yu hurriedly said, her pair of small hands tightly clutching her mother's sleeve. Mother, I also don't want to leave mother. I want to stay by mother's side. Mu Chen also said. Chapter 46-61. Hearing the children's words, Fengjiu felt a bit sour in her heart. She looked at them and revealed a faint smile. You have to listen to mother obediently. No matter what mother does, it's for your own good. When the three children heard this, they looked at each other and fell silent. All right, I'll send you to grandfather's place. You have to accompany grandfather. Mother will go back and refine pills for you. She led the children to the main hall. After sending them to the main hall, she had Leng Hua look after them. Only then did she enter her room and flash into the space. After about a month, Du Fan returned. After arriving at the palace, he first went to find Fengjiu to report the matter of sending Bo Qin to the sept, as well as the matter of sending 17 to the Phoenix Guards for training. As for Luo Yu, Qin Axian and the others, because they were told to take care of their various strongholds, they didn't come with them. Master, Luo Yu and the others have taken care of everything else. Right now, there aren't any major events happening in the various strongholds. During this period of time, Master can rest assured that everything will be normal. Du Fan helped Fengjiu pour a cup of tea and said. Fengjiu had just finished refining a cauldron of pills. Her clothes were stained with the smell of medicine and she looked a bit tired. She took a sip of tea and said, with them looking after me, of course I can rest assured. We've been living here for almost a month. For the remaining time, I plan to take the three children out for a walk and see the outside world. You should go back and rest for today. Pack up and prepare to leave tomorrow. Yes. Du Fan replied and bowed before leaving. Master, the water for a bath has been prepared. Do you want to take a bath first? Leng Hua walked up and asked. Fengjiu replied. He stood up and rubbed his shoulders, asking, where did the children go to play? They're training with Leng Hua in the martial arts field. Leng Hua said. Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded and went in to take a bath, preparing to wash away his fatigue and relax. And at the training field, Mu Chen and Mu Yu were having a contest. They were trying to fight barehanded, and there were several times when Mu Chen easily threw Yu to the ground. However, the ground in the martial arts field was not hard. Instead, it was made of fine sand. There was no pain when one fell on it. However, the little girl had been thrown on the sand time and time again. Her temper was starting to get a little worse. I don't believe that big brother won't fall. Yu said. Looking at her brother who was firmly standing in horse stance, she rolled her eyes and revealed a crafty smile. The next moment, she directly ran forward. She didn't wave her small fists to attack, rather used her small body to forcefully collide with him. Mu Chen saw her lowering her head like a calf and couldn't help but be startled. He quickly reached out to block her small head. Who knew that the little girl would use all her strength, and this collision really knocked him to the ground. Ha 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 ha, big brother also fell. Yu laughed happily. She didn't get up and just lay on Mu Chen's body, shouting and dancing. Not far away, Hao, who was training with Leng Hua, heard the laughter and looked back. He saw his brother and sister playing on the sand. Seeing this, his cold face couldn't help but reveal a smile. However, it was also at this time that his face suddenly changed. It was because the fine sand on the sand suddenly rolled up and formed a human sandman that rushed towards Mu Chen and Mu Yu. Chapter 46-62. Almost at the same time, Leng Hua's expression changed, and he immediately rushed toward Mu Chen and Mu Yu. However, the sandman formed by the fine sand pounced on the two children at an extremely fast speed. Dodge! Leng Hua shouted. At the same time, he condensed a wind blade in his hand. Whoosh! Bang! With a swoosh, a wind blade cut through the air, bringing with it a swift and fierce airflow. Immediately after, the wind palm accurately hit the human figure condensed from fine sand. With a bang, the condensed fine sand instantly scattered all over the ground, and a yellow talisman also floated to the ground. Seeing this, Lenghua heaved a sigh of relief. Even Hao, who was running over, also let out a sigh of relief. The two little guys on the ground also recovered from their shock at this time. They quickly stood up and patted the fine sand off their bodies. But at this moment, the talisman on the ground suddenly exploded with a bang, scattering into pieces. The moment it exploded, the fine sand on the training field rolled up, and a sand wall rose up along with the aura that came out of nowhere, enclosing them inside. Oh no! Lenghua had just heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the sudden change. He immediately took out an item from his space and crushed it. At the same time, he rushed toward the two little ones, shouting, Hao, come here. Hao had the strength of a golden core cultivator, and his ability to adapt was not bad. Therefore, Lenghua only thought of Mu Qin and Mu Yu. After all, the two of them had limited combat power. If they really encountered danger, they would not be able to protect themselves. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! The wind and sand swirled, and the fine sand on the ground was rolled up to form a sand wall to encircle them in the middle. In the middle, some fine sand quickly condensed into human figures and attacked Mu Qin and Mu Yu. The two little guys had already recovered from their shock. Seeing the human-shaped killers formed by the fine sand, Mu Qin immediately pulled his sister and ran toward Lenghua. Sister, hurry! The guards quickly went to report the shocking change. Feng Zhou, who was bathing, was lying in the water with her eyes closed. Suddenly, she seemed to have sensed something. She immediately raised her qi and splashed the water. At the same time, she quickly put on her inner clothes and put on her outer clothes. She didn't even bother to tie the belt of her outer clothes and rushed outside. Ling Shuang, who was guarding outside, did not know what was going on. But when she saw her master rushing outside while fastening his belt, she knew that it was urgent. She immediately followed after him. The masked man in the courtyard next door also seemed to sense something strange. Under the mask, his brows slightly furrowed, and his originally closed eyes suddenly opened. He rushed outside. The emperor of the Xianyuan kingdom rushed over after hearing the report from his guard. However, when he arrived at the training grounds, he saw that the training grounds had already been sealed off. The sand that was originally laid on the ground had formed 4 sand walls that surrounded the entire training grounds. He couldn't see what was going on inside, but he could feel a very powerful aura surging within. How? Shen you The emperor of Xianyuan shouted, but he could not hear the sound coming from inside. He could only hear the rustling of the wind and sand. Thus, he gathered his spiritual aura and was about to rush in to take a look when a hand landed on his shoulder. Before he could see who it was, he heard Fengzhou's voice. Chapter 46-63. As the emperor of the Xianyuan kingdom was pushed back, he only saw a red figure rushing forward. In the blink of an eye, the figure entered the sand wall. Seeing that it was Fengzhou, the emperor of the Xianyuan kingdom did not enter. Instead, he took a step back to watch and wait. At this moment, the masked man also arrived. However, he did not enter. Instead, he stood beside the emperor of the Xianyuan kingdom and quietly watched the scene in front of him with a thoughtful look in his eyes. In the middle of the training field, within the sand wall, Lenghua was destroying the human-shaped sand. However, these human-shaped sand were not alive. After being hit, they scattered on the ground and became a pile of loose sand. However, in the next moment, these loose sand gathered together to form a human-shaped figure and attacked them again. This process repeated over and over again. Even though his strength was not weak, he was unable to block the human-shaped sand while protecting the two children at the same time. Seeing that 4 or 5 human-shaped sand were surrounding the two children, Leng Hua and Hao immediately shouted, "Quickly, get out of the way. Run!" The two of them struck out with their palms, intending to destroy the human-shaped sand. However, they did not expect that after the human-shaped sand surrounded the two children, they actually scattered into a pile of loose sand and fell to the ground. Then, they quickly piled up and buried the two children. Ah! The wind and sand swirled and covered the two children as if it wanted to bury them alive. Yu, who had never encountered such a situation, cried out in alarm. She instinctively hugged her head and squatted down. Seeing this, Mu-chin hurriedly used his small body to shield his sister. Just when they thought that they would definitely be buried alive, they heard a familiar and reassuring voice. "Draw a circle on the ground. Break." The moment Fingzhou's voice sounded, the three children fiercely looked in the direction of the voice. Not far away, their mother's red dress fluttered in the wind. Her beautiful face was filled with a cold voice. They saw her forming a strange seal with her hands and pinching a talisman between her fingers. As the seal fell, the talisman was also burned out by the flames that rose from her fingertips. As soon as she said the word "break," the ground that was as calm as the surface of a lake was smashed by a stone, and a powerful aura rippled out. In that instant, the surrounding wind and sand also fell, and the fine sand that had condensed into a human shape also fell to the ground. Faintly, there seemed to be some fragments of talismans among the fine sand. "Mother! Mother! Mother!" The three children cheered happily and quickly ran toward her. The moment they saw her, the three of them forgot the fright just now and only joy and peace. Fingzhou glanced around and saw that the surrounding sandstorm had calmed down. She then looked at the three children and asked, "Mother's death. Are you injured?" "Mother, we are not injured." "But mother, where did that come from? Why did the sand turn into a human?" Hao asked. "Talismans." The masked man slowly walked forward and glanced at the people standing in the martial arts field. Then, his gaze fell on Fingzhou, who was practicing martial arts. The masked man looked at Fingzhou and said in a deep voice, "They have already begun to attack you. You don't have much time left." Chapter 46-64. She looked at the talismans scattered on the sand and waved her hand. A flame swept across them and burned all the talisman fragments. "What's going on? Who used the talismans against you?" the emperor of the Xianyuan kingdom asked. He secretly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the children were fine. "Father, don't worry. It's fine now. I'll send the children back to rest first. I'll look for you in a while," Fingzhou said. The emperor of the Xianyuan kingdom nodded when he heard that. "All right, go ahead." He watched as they walked towards the side hall where they were resting. He sighed softly and shook his head. He then walked back with his hands behind his back. Fingzhou sent the three children back to their rooms and asked them to bathe first. She then turned to Leng Hua and asked, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Leng Hua said. He then said apologetically, "I just didn't protect the three little masters well. You've already done a good job. Watch over them. Pack up while you're at it. We're leaving tomorrow," Fengzhou instructed. She then asked Leng Hua to stay as well. When she saw the masked man sitting in the courtyard, she said, "I'm going to say goodbye to father." With a lot on her mind, Fengzhou went to the main hall. Father Xianyuan was already waiting there. When he saw her enter, he gestured to her and said, "Have a seat." Fengzhou sat down and said, "Father, I'm preparing to leave with the children tomorrow." The emperor of the Xianyuan kingdom hesitated when he heard that. He asked, "You're leaving? Is it because of what happened today?" "I was going to leave anyway. I wanted to take the children out to see the world. I didn't expect something like this to happen today. So I'm leaving tomorrow." She was going to leave tomorrow. Now that something like this had happened, she couldn't stay here any longer. She was afraid that she would bring trouble to him and the empire. "Then, where are you going? Do you have a target?" he asked. Thinking that his 3 grandsons were about to leave, he felt reluctant to part with them. Fengjiu paused for a moment, then said, "We still need to make a trip to the heavens. As for the other matters, it hasn't been decided yet. Half a year's time is almost up. Perhaps I will let the children go with their master in advance." Sigh. "I got it, you guys can go now. Take good care of yourselves and take care of yourselves. Nothing is more important than safety. No matter where you go, if you have the chance in the future, just bring the children back to see me. If you can't come back, just remember to send me a message to let me know that you are all safe." He sighed softly, and there was an unconcealable loneliness in his words. Fengjiu's lips moved, but he didn't know what to say. In the end, he just nodded. "I will." She took out some pills from her space and said, "Father, keep these pills with you just in case. If you encounter any problems in the future that you can't solve, you can send a message to my brother and ask him to come and help." He didn't refuse and took the pills. He replied, "Okay, I got it." Fengjiu stood up and looked at him deeply. "Father, parting is the saddest thing. You don't have to send us off tomorrow morning." Hearing that, he felt bitter. He looked at her and said, "Okay, take care of yourselves. Don't worry too much about this place. We are all fine here. Just take care of yourselves." Chapter 46-65. The next morning, Fengjiu and the rest boarded the spaceship and left. The emperor of the Xianyuan kingdom didn't send them off. Instead, he stood at a high vantage point and watched as their spaceship slowly ascended into the sky and disappeared into the clouds. Only then did the emperor of the Xianyuan kingdom retract his gaze and walk back slowly. At the bow of the spaceship, Fengjiu set up a soundproof enchantment. He looked at the masked man and said, "Didn't you say that they couldn't come down? Then how did they use talismans to create assassins?" The masked man leaned on one side. Compared to Fengjiu, his expression was more relaxed. He glanced at her and then looked at the clouds outside the spaceship. He said, "They can't come down, but that doesn't mean they can't do anything. Furthermore, they dealt with Xianyuan Mo's. Naturally, they won't leave you alive. It's only a matter of time before they make a move. Furthermore, since they've already made a move, it's impossible for them to stop." He paused and then said casually, "It seems like the rest of the journey won't be too boring." Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed. He said, "Then shouldn't you tell me about what happened up there?" "What should I tell you?" "Tell you that you're still an ant to the people up there who can kill you anytime with your current strength. Or that the people up there want to kill you, and you'll have a slim chance of survival in the coming days." He glanced at Fengjiu and swirled the wine glass in his hand. He smiled faintly and said, "I heard that you're destined to break through the 8 extremes of the heavenly Tao and become the master of the world. Perhaps this is a prophecy made by some of the people down there who are knowledgeable about the past and present. However, in the eyes of the people up there, those who are destined to have such a destiny are people who will be plagued with misfortune. They will have to go through all kinds of dangers and may even die at any time. Even if you're lucky enough to grow up, they will have many opportunities to kill you before you can stand shoulder to shoulder with them." Fengjiu pursed his lips and frowned. He said calmly, "I don't want to know that. I just want to know how I can find my enemies." Also, is it only by ascending that I can see those powerful beings that you speak of? What kind of place is the nine heavens immortal realm you mentioned? Hearing this, he smiled and shook his head. I can't say that because it's very likely that you won't be able to ascend in this lifetime. You have to know that in order for you to ascend, you have to go through 81 heavenly thunders to become an immortal. Since the Almighty above is trying to kill you, how could they let you go through 81 heavenly thunders? He smiled and said, let's talk about these things when you have the chance to ascend and become an immortal. As soon as he finished speaking, he downed the wine in his cup in one gulp and then collapsed onto the deck of the boat. He held his head with one hand and closed his eyes as he rested on his side. Obviously, he didn't want to talk to Fingzhou anymore. Fingzhou glanced at him and pursed his lips. He didn't say anything else and just waved his hand to remove the soundproof barrier. He stood up and walked around. She came to the front of the ship's bow and watched the ship glide through the clouds. She watched as the wind and clouds brushed past the ship's hull. She looked at the endless horizon in front of her and could not help but turn back to look at the three children. She made up her mind. Chapter 46-66. 2 days later, the airship was slowly flying in the sky. The people on the ship were either cultivating or resting. Everything looked so peaceful. However, in this seemingly peaceful sky, the weather suddenly darkened. At first, the wind whistled, causing the ship to sway a little. Then, a drizzle fell from the sky like needles. Why is it suddenly raining? Du Fan opened his eyes and looked at the sudden change in the sky. Seeing the drizzle fall like needles, he couldn't help but stand up in surprise. There was a barrier formed by spiritual power around the ship. Regardless of whether it was wind or rain, it couldn't blow in. Therefore, he stood at the bow of the ship and looked at the sudden change in the sky, observing for any abnormalities. What's wrong? Is something wrong? Leng Hua walked over and asked. He also looked at the sky that was raining. Seeing that the sky was dark, he asked, should we find a place to stop first? Didn't Master enter the space to refine pills? He probably won't be able to come out now. Du Fan said, still looking at the sky. He felt that the atmosphere in the sky was somewhat oppressive. Master entered the space and can't come out. Then, we'll control the airship to land. It's good to stop below. You see, the wind is getting stronger and stronger, and it's raining. The airship will be unstable during flight. Leng Hua said, thinking that it was necessary to find a place to stop below. Hearing this, Du Fan nodded. That's good. Let me see what's below. As he spoke, he came to the side of the ship and looked down at the clouds. He also released his divine sense and looked down. Du Fan. Quick. Let's move the airship and stop below. Leng Hua's voice changed slightly, with a trace of surprise. Du Fan, who was looking down with his divine sense, quickly turned back. What's wrong? Du Fan turned back and saw that his expression had changed slightly. Following his gaze, he saw that about 10 meters in front of their airship, there was a whirlpool in the sky. The whirlpool was extremely large, and it was pitch black inside. It made whistling sounds in the wind and rain. It was as if there was a suction force, sucking their airship into the whirlpool. The airship, which was flying slowly, moved forward much faster. Not good. Hurry and call Master. Du Fan exclaimed and asked Leng Hua to call their master. He immediately used his spiritual power to control the airship to turn around and descend. However, they had somewhat underestimated the power of the whirlpool. Even though the spaceship had turned around under Du Fan's control and was descending, the whirlpool's suction was still extremely terrifying. It was as if there was a pair of hands inside the whirlpool that was pulling them in. The spaceship was uncontrollably pulled toward the whirlpool. Moreover, because it was being forcefully sucked in, the airship tilted slightly. This movement was felt by the three children who were cultivating in the side room. They quickly ran out to see what was going on. "Hurry and go in. Don't come out." Leng Hua pushed them in, afraid that they would encounter an accident when they came out. Therefore, the three children were pushed back into the cabin by Leng Hua as soon as they took a step out. Moreover, because of the tilting of the airship, they could not stand steadily and fell around. "Master! Master!" Chapter 46-67. Fengjiu was refining pills in her space. Just as she was about to open the furnace, she heard Leng Hua's anxious calls and knocks on the door. She hurriedly came out. However, the moment she opened the door, she saw darkness and a little dizzy. She couldn't even stand steadily and swayed with the violent shaking of the ship. At that moment, she felt a powerful force pulling the spaceship forcefully, and the spaceship lost its balance and was sucked in. After a moment of dizziness, she felt the barrier of the spaceship break with a bang, and the spaceship fell down from a high place. "Oh no! Du Fan, Leng Hua, quickly stabilize the ship with me. Leng Hua, take care of the three children. Don't let them out." Feng Jiu immediately shouted. Seeing that the situation was not good, she immediately flew out of the spaceship and came to the bottom of the spaceship to quickly stabilize it. The moment she shouted, Du Fan and Leng Shuang quickly took action. They each held on to the three corners of the spaceship. However, even though they had used their spiritual energy to protect the spaceship, they could not withstand the powerful force of the spaceship. As a result, when the spaceship was pressed down, they could only slow down the force of the falling spaceship and minimize the damage to the minimum. Bang, bang, bang. The ship landed on the ground but did not stop immediately. Instead, it slid on the ground for about 10 meters and knocked down many trees before coming to a stop due to the friction between the sand and stones. Fengjiu, Du Fan, and Leng Hua came out from the side of the ship. Seeing that the ship had stabilized, they finally heaved a sigh of relief. Thinking of the three children on the ship, Fengjiu immediately jumped onto the ship. "How are the children?" Fengjiu quickly stepped forward and asked. Only then did Leng Hua open the door of the room where the children were. He saw Hao hugging Mu Qin and Mu Yu. The three of them hugged each other tightly as they sat on the ground. Their faces were pale and panicked. After seeing them, they seemed to heave a sigh of relief and quickly stood up. "Mother!" The three children threw themselves at Fengjiu, clearly frightened. I'm fine. Are you hurt?" Fengjiu asked, looking at the three children one by one to see if they were injured by the violent shaking of the ship. "No, we fell on the deck and didn't stand up, so we weren't injured," Hao said. "Yes, no injuries." Mu Chen and Mu Yu nodded and said, "That's good." Fengjiu breathed a sigh of relief and touched their little faces. At this time, as if he thought of something, he led them out of the cabin and came to the outside. Looking at this unfamiliar place, he could not help but frown. Previously, he had only been focused on stabilizing the spacecraft that was being flung downwards, so he didn't have time to look around carefully. Now that he looked around, he realized that this place was full of strangeness and oppression. Moreover, it was noon when they were there, but here, it was pitch black. The surroundings were quiet and no other sounds could be heard. There was no spiritual aura in the air either. It was as if they were in a place that was isolated from spiritual aura. "Master, a whirlpool suddenly appeared in the sky earlier. We quickly turned the ship around, but we were sucked in too late," Du Fan said. At this time, he also looked around and felt that this place seemed a little strange. Chapter 46-68. He went into the cabin this morning and told us not to disturb him. He hasn't come out since, Ling Shuang said as he looked at the tightly shut cabin door. Hearing this, Feng Jiu frowned slightly, but he didn't check. Instead, he walked to the bow of the ship and looked around. He saw that they seemed to be in a cave in the mountains. Other than some trees and weeds, they were surrounded by high peaks that reached into the clouds. Du Fan and Lang Hua, you two go and check the surroundings. See if there are any people nearby and where we are now, Feng Jiu instructed the two of them. Yes, the two of them responded. They gathered their qi and flew off on their swords. Feng Jiu looked at the sky and immediately gathered spiritual energy in her hands to set up a boundary to protect the ship. However, just as she was setting up the boundary, her heart skipped a beat. She looked at her hands and her eyes flashed. Don't run around. Don't get off the ship, Feng Jiu looked at the three children and instructed them. Okay, we know. The three children responded seriously. Seeing her walk to the closed cabin door and knock, they followed behind her and watched. Knock knock. Feng Jiu knocked twice. There was no sound from inside. She called out, if you don't open the door, I'm going in. She waited for a while, but there was no movement inside. Thus, she used her divine thought and pressed her hand on the door. The next moment, she pushed it open. The cabin wasn't small. Other than a bed for resting, there was space for other things. She walked in and scanned the room. Her gaze fell on the figure sitting cross-legged on the bed. There was an aura around the figure. It was obvious that he had set up a boundary to protect his body. At this moment, there was only an extremely weak aura around his body. He sat there with his eyes closed. It was as if he had entered a state of meditation and was not aware of anything in the outside world. Feng Jiu glanced at him and remembered some things he mentioned. She stopped and said to the three children behind her, you guys go out first. Okay. Although the three children were curious, they listened to her and left. After the three children went out, Feng Jiu stepped forward and observed him for a while. After confirming that his divine soul was not in his body at this time, she frowned. Without breaking the boundary that protected his body, she turned and walked out. She remembered him saying that because this body wasn't his original body, he couldn't stay here for a long time. Moreover, every once in a while, his soul would have to return to his original body. She just didn't expect that she would encounter this today. Thinking of the situation she sensed just now, her heart sank. It seemed that she had to leave this place as soon as possible. On the other side, Du Fan and Lang Hua, who had gone to investigate the surroundings, were flying through the night on their swords. Suddenly, the two of them felt that their flying speed was gradually slowing down, and their bodies seemed to be getting heavier. Something doesn't seem right. Before Lang Hua could finish speaking, his vision turned black and he fainted. Lang Hua! Du Fan shouted. The spiritual aura on his body surged. However, at that moment, a dark green flame appeared in front of him and was extinguished. Almost at that moment, his spiritual aura seemed to be suppressed. His vision darkened and he lost consciousness and fell. Chapter 46-69. On the airship, Feng Jiu frowned. She looked around and didn't see Du Fan and Lang Hua. She had a bad premonition. She summoned her contracted beasts from her space. Fire Phoenix, Cloud Swallow. 3 rays of light came out. After the light disappeared, the Fire Phoenix and 2 Cloud Swallow beasts appeared in front of her. What happened? Fire Phoenix looked around. When she sensed the aura here, her voice changed. It's demonic aura. Demonic aura. Feng Jiu raised her eyebrows. I only felt that the aura here was a little strange. Moreover, I gradually couldn't use my spiritual power. I didn't expect it to be demonic aura. Beasts were very sensitive to demonic aura. Since the Fire Phoenix said so, then it must be true. Du Fan and Lang Hua went out to scout and still haven't returned. I'm worried that something happened to them. You guys stay here and guard. I'll go take a look, Feng Jiu said. Just as she was getting off the airship, she heard a voice. Wait a minute. Hearing this voice, Feng Jiu was slightly surprised. She turned around and saw that the masked man had already come out. Seeing this, she said, "Didn't you have an out-of-body experience before? I thought that you wouldn't be able to come back here." She didn't expect that he would be able to wake up. I also didn't expect that something would happen in such a short time. You were actually brought to this demon realm by them. The masked man sighed and slowly walked out. He looked at Yu and paused for a moment. Then he looked at Feng Jiu. I have to take them away. This place is not suitable for them. Feng Jiu was silent for a moment. She looked at the three children. After a while, she asked, "You said that this is the demon realm. I found that the aura of spiritual power here is restricted. How are you going to take them away?" At present, the blood curse on Yu and Chen has not been completely removed. The longer you stay in the demon realm, the more difficult it will be for you to use your spiritual energy. Now that we're here, I can still take them away, but it's hard to say if we stay any longer. Also, I received news that they want to trap you here forever. In this place, even with your strength, I'm afraid it will be difficult to open a corner of the sky and return to your original place. I'm not leaving. I don't want to leave Mother. Wherever Mother is, Yu will be there. Yu shouted loudly, and hugged to her mother's side, tightly hugging her leg. I'm not leaving either. Mother is in danger now, I won't leave. I want to be with my mother. Hao said and stood beside Feng Jiu. I won't leave even if you beat me to death. Mu Qin also came to Feng Jiu's side and held her hand tightly. He looked at the masked man warily. We're not leaving. I will never go with you. Even if this is the demon realm, we still want to be with Mother. We don't want Mother to be in danger. Hearing this, Feng Jiu couldn't help but sigh softly. He touched Yu's head and said, "It's dangerous here. Sooner or later, you will worship him as your master. Leaving with your master is also a good thing." No. No. I don't want to. Yu said with red eyes. She looked up at her mother pitifully. Mother, Yu doesn't want to leave Mother. Yu doesn't want to, don't. Chapter 46-70. Hearing this, the masked man who was about to step forward stopped. His deep gaze looked at the little girl who was like a little beast. Seeing that her eyes were slightly red and filled with anger and vigilance, he sighed in his heart and a trace of helplessness flashed through his eyes. Only then did he look at Feng Jiu and said, "Aren't you going to look for them? Go. We'll wait for you here." Seeing this, Feng Jiu looked at him and patted the three children beside her and said, "You guys wait here obediently. Mother will go look for Du Fan and Lang Hua. Mother, you must come back safely. We'll wait for you here." Yu's young and tender voice carried a unique softness of a child. With a worried look, she pulled her mother's hand and said, "My brothers and I will wait here for Mother to come back. If Mother doesn't come back, we won't go anywhere." Feng Jiu's heart warmed and she rubbed her little head and said, "Okay, be good. Mother will be back very soon." She looked at the masked man and said, "I'll have to trouble you." After saying this, she took a deep breath and stepped out of the airship and went in the direction Du Fan and the others had gone. Shuttling back and forth in the night, she felt that the demonic aura in the air was getting heavier and heavier. In the night, other than the sound of the wind, there seemed to be no other sound. However, at this time, she suddenly stopped and looked back. At this time, she could no longer see the location of the spaceship, as if it was covered by a thin fog. She thought of the 3 children on the spaceship, and then remembered that the fire phoenix and the masked man were guarding the spaceship. Thus, she did not stop and went forward. Leng Hua. Fengjiu called out in surprise. She saw that the person sitting in the grass in front of her was Leng Hua, who had gone out with Du Fan just a moment ago. However, at this time, he was sitting in a daze and his whole face was lifeless and lifeless. Seeing this, she quickly went forward. What's the matter? You guys met. She pushed his shoulder with her hand, but just as she touched him, her voice stopped, and her whole body quickly retreated. Xiao xiao. 2 vines sprang out as if they were alive. If she hadn't retreated at that moment, she would have been tied up. Looking again, Leng Hua, who was sitting in a daze on the grass, suddenly changed into the appearance of a big tree. The trunk of the big tree was about 2 people hugging it. There weren't many branches and leaves, but they were swaying. Leng Hua's face appeared to be struggling inside the tree. What a good demonic tree. Looking at this scene, Fengjiu's eyes turned cold. She stretched out her hand and the Qingfeng sword, which was glowing with a green light, appeared in her hand. As the spirit force in her palm surged, flames surged. The red figure rose up, raised the sword in her hand high up, and slashed down fiercely at the demon tree below. Suddenly, the humanoid face on the tree let out a shrill shriek. As soon as the shriek rang out, Fengjiu's hand involuntarily trembled, and the sword in her hand slashed to the side. Chapter 4671. The sound was like oil coming into contact with fire, producing a sizzling sound. As the flames burned in the air, the demonic aura gradually decreased. Some of the demonic aura and some of the surrounding trees quickly retreated as if they were afraid of being touched by the flames. Even the demonic tree wanted to take the opportunity to escape. Fengjiu retracted her aura and hid in the darkness to chase after the demonic tree. She didn't extinguish the flames on this side and let it continue to burn. She took a deep breath and directly pierced the body of the demonic tree with the Qingfeng sword stand in her hand. When the sharp sword pierced, with a whoosh, green liquid flowed out. At the same time, the demonic tree let out a blood-curdling scream. The body of the tree slowly shrunk until it finally became a human-sized tree stump. Speak, where is my man? Fengjiu shouted. She pulled out the Qingfeng sword and pointed it at the demonic tree. As she increased her strength, the sharp sword tip pierced into the human-shaped tree stump. Slivers of liquid seeped out, accompanied by the pleading of the demonic tree. Don't kill me, I'll bring you there. It hurriedly begged for mercy, afraid that its hundreds of years of cultivation would be destroyed. However, the tree demon led the way in front. As they walked, Fengjiu glanced at the ground without batting an eyelid. She secretly gathered a wisp of flame in her palm. In the next moment, she suddenly struck out her palm and slapped the ground beside her that seemed to be pitch black with nothing else. Bang! Ah! With a bang, the palm wind and flame struck down. Following that, a blood-curdling scream rang out. Some black liquid splashed out from the ground. Fengjiu waved her hand and swept the splashed liquid to the other side. The demonic tree wanted to take the opportunity to escape. She coldly snorted. With a sweep of the Qingfeng sword in her hand, she cut off the branches on the human-shaped tree stump. Ah! The demonic tree was shocked. It instinctively squatted down. Seeing the branches on the ground, it trembled and turned its head back. It said to Fingzhou, I can't bring you to the front. Otherwise, the demonic king will kill me. Then you're not afraid that I'll kill you? Or, do you want to have a taste of being burned as firewood? Fingzhou glanced at it, playing with a cluster of flames in his hand, and threatened in a cold voice. Looking at the life-heavenly flame, the tree demon was scared. He shrank his body and said, "No, I'll take you there. I'll take you there, okay?" Only then did it accept its fate and lead Fingzhou forward. When they arrived in front of a big tree, it shrank back and said, "Go in there. It's right there." Fingzhou looked at the place the tree demon was pointing at. It was a huge, lush tree. The trunk of the tree would probably need 7 or 8 people to surround it. The demonic aura around the tree was slightly thicker, but other than that, there was nothing special about it. "How do we get in?" Fengzhou asked. "Turn left and right around the tree trunk. Then, hit the tree trunk and shout, 'Open.' Then, it will open." The dryad whispered as it observed its surroundings. "Underground palace." Fengzhou raised his eyebrows. "Yes, yes. Your 2 people were caught by the demonic empress herself. They were caught inside. The demonic empress loves to absorb the essence of cultivators. If you don't want to see them reduced to bones, you better go in quickly," the tree demon said as it retreated. It was afraid that Fengzhou would come to settle the score with it. Fengzhou glanced at it and followed its instructions. He circled left and right around the tree. Finally, he hit the tree trunk and shouted, "Open." Chapter 4672. It was an underground palace. As she walked down the stairs, she could faintly hear sounds coming from inside. On the walls on both sides, clusters of faint green will-o'-the-wisps floated, illuminating the path beneath her feet. The faint green willow-the-wisp's glow also added a strange aura to the place. The willow-the-wisps danced inside, and there was also a flow of aura in the air. Clearly, this underground palace had more than one entrance. Somewhere, it should be connected to the outside world. Unexpectedly, after she entered, she did not see a single demon. As she walked, she realized that this underground palace led to a cave in the mountain. It seemed that on the other side, a large group of demons had gathered. She stood close to the stone wall, slightly tilting her body to look at the place where the will-o'-the-wisps floated. She saw that the sound she heard earlier was coming from there. At this moment, there were about 100 demons of different shapes and sizes. In the middle of those demons, who else could it be but Du Fan and Leng Hua? Seeing that the 2 of them seemed to have fainted and were unconscious, but seeing them being hung upside down by those demons, a trace of anger arose in her heart. Her gaze swept across, and landed on 2 great demons among those demons. One of them was a demoness with heavy makeup and a seductive face. The demonic aura on her body was extremely strong. Not to mention her seductive appearance, just the demonic aura on her body made it hard for people to ignore her. On the other hand, the face of the one at the side couldn't be seen clearly. It was as though there was a layer of mist covering his face. One could only feel a powerful demonic aura emanating from his body. Needless to say, these 2 should be the Demon King and Demon Empress that the tree demon mentioned. Just as she was thinking about how to save Du Fan and Leng Hua, she heard a voice coming from inside. "Why did you bring these 2 people back? They are the subordinates of that ghost Dr. Fingzhou. If you capture her people, she will definitely come looking for you. Won't you be causing trouble then?" The Demon King's voice carried some worry. Looking at the 2 cultivators who were hung upside down, he said to the Demon Empress beside him, "Let them go. Just pretend that you don't know that they are here." When the Demon Empress heard this, she raised her coquettish eyes and glanced at him. "Put it back. Don't forget that the immortals up there told us to take care of them. If we let them leave just like that, how are we going to explain it to them? She paused and played with her bright red nails. Besides, even if we let them go, those immortals won't let us go. Besides, they said that as long as we succeed, we will be rewarded. Humph. How could the words of those people be taken seriously? In my opinion, they want to borrow the hands of that ghost Dr. Fingzhou to exterminate our Yao clan. Otherwise, why would they send them to us instead of other places? Was Fingzhou a pushover? She's the Lord of Heaven and Earth. Back then, when the Devil Lord fought with her, he ended up with his soul scattered. Our strength isn't even as strong as the Devil Lord, and she doesn't have any conflict of interest with us. Why should we provoke her? The Demon King said coldly. Looking at Du Fan and Leng Hua, he said to the Demon Empress, "Let them go. Let them leave as soon as possible." Chapter 46-73. How can that be the same? Just listen to me. There won't be a mistake. The Demon King said. I really want to meet her, but I'm afraid she won't come. The Demon Empress chuckled and didn't take the Demon King's words to heart. Fingzhou listened for a moment and her heart moved. She quietly retreated to a dark corner and took out a talisman from her spatial zone. With a twist of her hand, the talisman flew out. Not long later, her voice came from the direction she came from. Hand over my people. The voice came from the other side and echoed because of the underground palace. The voice was cold and carried killing intent. In an instant, the hundreds of demons were shocked and quickly dispersed. Not good. It must be that Fingzhou. The Demon King was shocked and his voice carried a trace of panic. He didn't want to be enemies with Fingzhou and didn't want to fight with her. If they fought their way in, then what are you afraid of? I'll go meet her. The Demon Empress snorted and twisted her body like a water snake. She said to the small demons, leave a few to watch. The rest, follow me. Yes. As soon as the order was given, the demons followed the Demon Empress and walked towards the palace in a grandiose manner. When they moved forward, Fingzhou flashed and came to the side of Du Fan and Leng Hua. She slashed with the sharp blade in her hand and killed a few demons that were guarding at the side. With a slash of the green-edged sword Qi, she put them down. You. The Demon King was originally sitting and sighing when he suddenly saw a red figure flash out. He was instantly shocked. When he looked closely, he saw that the person was dressed in red and had an extremely beautiful appearance. Her aura was restrained, but her entire body was emitting a powerful and intimidating aura. Even though he had never seen Fingzhou before, he knew that this woman was definitely the ghost Dr. Fingzhou. You're the ghost Dr. Fingzhou. The Demon King looked at her, and the face in the mist gradually revealed its facial features. It was not outstanding, but on the contrary, it was a little scary. At this moment, it was staring at Fingzhou. Fingzhou ignored it. Instead, he pinched Leng Hua and Du Fan's Renzhong acupuncture points to wake them up. If she wasn't worried that those demons would attack them, she wouldn't even have to waste an incarnation talisman to lure them away. Master. When the two of them woke up, they were startled for a moment. They quickly got up, but they felt that their legs were a little numb, as if it was caused by a blockage of blood and qi. It's good that you're awake. As Fingzhou spoke, he looked at the Demon King and said, from what you said just now, someone wants to borrow your hands to kill me. Do you know who they are? As she spoke, she slowly walked forward. Her green-tipped sword, which was suffused with a sharp green glow, was pointed diagonally at the ground as she approached step by step. The Demon King's strength wasn't weak, but he didn't want to be Fingzhou's enemy, so he didn't want to attack. He hurriedly said, let's talk things over, let's talk things over. I want to know, who exactly are those people you're talking about? Fengjiu asked. They. As soon as the Demon King's voice was heard, there was a commotion. Kill them. The Demon Empress' voice was heard, and she ordered the small demons to go forward. The reason why Du Fan and Leng Hua were hit at the beginning was probably because they were careless and didn't expect that it would be these monsters. At this moment, seeing these monsters attacking them, Du Fan sneered and said, then let's see who kills who. Chapter 46-74. Swish. Clang. Bang. 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 For a moment, the sharp sound of air currents, the sound of swords clashing, and the heavy sound of attacks resounded in the underground palace. The scene instantly became chaotic. Over 100 demons surrounded Fengjiu and the other two. Green demon blood splattered all over the ground. Screams and roars echoed in the underground palace, lingering for a long time. Stop fighting, stop fighting. All of you, stop. The Demon King roared loudly. However, Fengjiu and the others wouldn't listen to him. The demons covered their heads and fled in all directions. Seeing that they couldn't escape, they could only fight to the death. Some of them revealed their true forms to fight. However, facing Fengjiu, Du Fan, and Leng Hua, these demons' combat strength was still too weak. The only ones who could fight against them were probably the Demon King and the Demon Empress. Looking at the dead little demons on the ground, a trace of bloodthirsty savagery flashed through the Demon Empress' eyes. She stared at Fengjiu's peerlessly beautiful face and looked at her body, revealing a strange smile. She spread out her hands and twisted her body, transforming into a snake demon with a human face and a snake body. As the snake body and hands moved, a faint hissing sound could be heard amidst the chaos. Fengjiu looked down and saw snakes slithering out from the ground. Some were as thin as chopsticks, some were the size of a finger, and some were 2 fingers wide. These snakes were brightly colored, and some even had bright crowns on their heads. Just by looking at the color of these snakes, one could tell that they were extremely poisonous. Although the 3 of them had poison-resistant physiques, and even poison couldn't do anything to them, no one was willing to be bitten by these snakes. Thus, when Fengjiu slashed out a sword qi with the Qingfeng sword in her hand, she raised the flame in her palm and injected it into the sword qi. The flame followed the sword qi and suddenly shot out with a whoosh, burning the ground. Get behind me. Fengjiu shouted clearly, telling Du Fan and Leng Hua to return to her side. When the two heard her voice, they simultaneously leaped up and quickly came to their master's side. However, just as they stood behind her, they saw a red figure rush out, heading straight for the Demon Empress. Seeing Fengjiu make a move, the Demon King instinctively wanted to help. However, after taking a step forward, he stopped. Ghost Dr. Fengjiu was the master of heaven and earth. Even in the demon realm, he had heard of her powerful methods. Her strongest point wasn't her heaven-defying alchemy skills, but her shocking combat strength. How many experts had to die in her hands for her name, Ghost Dr. Fengjiu, to spread throughout the world? He didn't dare to provoke her, nor did he dare to make her his enemy. Because he knew that if he made her his enemy, he would be the one to die in the end. He just didn't expect that the people above would trick them. They sent Fengjiu here. Whether Fengjiu killed them or they killed Fengjiu, it was a win-win situation for those people. But now, things had developed to this point, and he couldn't stop it. He knew that the Demon Empress would definitely die. If he dared to make a move, even he would definitely die under Fengjiu's sword. Ah! Chapter 46-75. Green demonic blood splattered as the demon empress head was chopped off and flew out, rolling among the demons. One of the demons didn't seem to be able to react as it blankly reached out to catch the flying head. Just like that, it looked at the demon empress head and her eyes that were wide open with fear and unwillingness. It was so frightened that it shrieked. "Ah!" Following that shriek, the little demon instinctively threw the demon empress head up to someone else. This time, no one stood there foolishly to catch the demon head. Instead, they automatically retreated and allowed the demon empress head to fall to the ground and roll a few times until it stopped moving. The surrounding demons didn't dare to make a single sound. They widened their eyes in shock and fear as they watched the demon empress head being chopped off. They watched as the demon empress snake body fell to the ground with a bang and was stepped on by the red-clothed human lady. Then, the green glowing sword in her hand directly and ruthlessly stabbed down. Just like that, she cut open the demon empress' stomach in front of all the demons and took out the demon empress' snake gallbladder and her inner core. Even if they were demons, they were so shocked by that bloody and cruel scene that their faces turned pale. They swallowed their saliva and retreated, afraid that they would end up like the demon empress. The demon king was also shocked by that scene. It didn't expect that Fengjiu would directly take out the demon empress' snake gallbladder and inner core without saying anything. Furthermore, she cut open the demon empress' stomach in front of all the demons. That scene and that method shocked even the demon king. Does anyone still want to die? I don't mind sending it on its way. Fengjiu turned around and swept her cold gaze across all the demons before finally landing on the demon king. Being swept by her gaze, all the demons instinctively retreated and didn't dare to make a sound. The demon king looked at the dead demon empress and seemed to want to say something. In the end, it only turned into a sigh. I advised it not to go against you. I didn't expect. Fengjiu looked at him coldly and said, "You have no intention of opposing me. Even if you are a demon, I will not attack you. However, if you want to avenge your demon empress, I will naturally accompany you." The underground flames were still burning. The demons avoided the flames and looked at their demon king. "I naturally do not wish to go against the ghost doctor." The demon king sighed and said, "The demon empress is in the wrong for capturing your men. Now that you have killed her, I hope that ghost physician can be magnanimous and let my little demons go. As for what ghost physician wants to know, I will tell you everything I know." Fengjiu's eyes flickered when she heard this. She glanced at the demon king and immediately waved her hand to extinguish the burning flames. However, as the flames were extinguished, the smell of burnt flesh wafted out from the ground. It was very pungent. "Ghost physician, this way please," the demon king said and gestured for them to enter. Fengjiu saw and followed him forward. Behind them, Du Fan and Leng Hua followed unhurriedly. They followed the demon king to a cave abode. It was a cave abode at the bottom of a mountain. Unlike the underground palace, it looked more like a place where the demon king cultivated. "Ghost physician, have a seat." Chapter 46-76. His voice paused for a moment, a trace of hesitation could be seen on his face. Then, as if he had made up his mind about something, he clenched his teeth and said, "I didn't want things to turn out this way. I didn't want to be enemies with the ghost doctor, and I didn't know that they would send her to our demon realm. We only found out after she came to our side. Those people above want us to kill you, and the demon empress didn't even discuss with me before capturing your two subordinates." Fengjiu interrupted him, "I already know all this. What I want to know is about those people who want to kill me. Those four are the four great experts of the immortal realm, also known as the four great emperors. That's all I know, I don't know anything else. After all, the immortal realm isn't a place where we can go. the Demon King said, indicating that he didn't know much else. For great emperors. Fengzhou's eyes flashed. After a moment of silence, he asked, I saw a barrier set up in the sky of the demon realm. Now that we want to leave, do you have a way to send us away? Of course, I can send you away. Hearing that she wanted to leave, the Demon King's heart relaxed. This killing god, he didn't dare to let her stay in the demon realm. Since she was willing to leave, he would naturally send her away as soon as possible. Then let's go. My flying ship is parked some distance away from here. If you send us away, we'll drop this matter. Fengzhou said slowly, glancing at the surrounding demons. And so, Fengzhou led the Demon King, Du Fan, Leng Hua, and the others in the direction of the flying ship. At the flying ship, the surroundings were pitch black. Demon Qi was surging in the air, and faintly, there was a little bit of green light floating in the air. The masked man stood at the bow of the ship with the 3 children by his side. Leng Hua also stood at the side, waiting for her master to return. The surroundings were quiet, and no one on the airship spoke. Fire Phoenix landed on the shoulder of Mu Chen and also didn't speak. The 2 cloud-swallowing beasts were lying on the side. Perhaps feeling that the atmosphere was somewhat oppressive, Yu pulled the robe of the masked man. Feeling his robe being pulled, he turned around and lowered his head to look at the little guy beside him. Seeing her delicate and cute little face, his eyes couldn't help but soften as he asked, What's wrong? Will anything happen to my mother? Yu raised her head and asked. Her beautiful eyes were filled with worry. Hearing this, his lips curled into a smile. No, with your mother's strength, even if she were to meet the ruler of the demon realm, she would still be able to win. Then can we leave from here? Yu asked again. Don't worry. As long as I am not here, nothing will happen. Moreover, your mother is also not someone to be trifled with, so even if it is somewhat troublesome, in the end, we will definitely leave this place safely. He rubbed the head of Yu and revealed a smile. Then are the people who want to harm us very powerful? My mother can't beat them now. Since you're so powerful, then do you know where my father is now? When will he come back? Yu grabbed the hand that was rubbing her head and threw out one question after another. Children shouldn't think too much, these questions are useless. He smiled but didn't answer her. Chapter 46-77. Seeing the great demon behind Fengzhou, the masked man's eyes flashed with a smile as he muttered, Looks like things are going to be interesting from now on. The archfiend followed Fengzhou to the outside of the ship. When he saw the ancient mythological beast Fire Phoenix and the 2 sacred beasts, his eyes narrowed. He didn't go in, but said to Fengzhou, Ghost Doctor, you guys go in. I'll send you guys out. Okay. Fengzhou replied and brought Du Fan and Leng Hua into the barrier. Mother. Mother, you're back. Mother. The 3 children quickly came to her side. Seeing that she had returned safely, the 3 of them revealed happy smiles. You're back. Let's go. Mother will bring you guys into the cabin. The archfiend will send us out, but the ship will probably still shake. She took the 3 children into the cabin, but she didn't let them stay in the cabin. Instead, she directly sent them into the space. After closing the cabin door, Fengzhou walked out and gestured for Du Fan and the others to sit down so that they wouldn't be shaken out. The masked man stood at the front of the ship. He glanced at Fengzhou and said, It looks like I still underestimated you. Fengzhou glanced at him and slowly said, You should be glad that we're not enemies. Hearing this, the masked man smiled and looked at the sky. Indeed, those who are your enemies should be restless right now. Fengzhou didn't say anything. Because at this moment, the archfiend outside the ship was emitting a huge amount of demonic qi. His figure instantly became 10 times bigger, as if he was holding up the sky. He let out a low roar and his hands tore a hole in the sky. The hole was pushed open by the demonic chi, as if it wanted to close but couldn't. The Demon King stretched out his hand and lifted the spaceship that was parked below and sent it through the exit in the sky. As the spaceship was sent out, the opening behind it also closed as if it had never appeared. We're back. Fengzhou looked at the familiar sky. At this moment it was already dark, but the sky was dotted with stars. The spiritual energy in the air faintly flowed. The aura was so familiar. She smiled and controlled the ship to fly slowly while walking into the cabin. Not long after, she brought the 3 children out. Mother, we're back. Yu happily jumped up and down on the ship. Fengzhou smiled and bent down to pick her up. She looked at the masked man. 2 more days. I'll accompany them for 2 days. After 2 days, you can take them away. She also knew that the current situation was not suitable for the 3 children to be by her side. Even if she was reluctant to part with them, they would have to part in the end. Yu's mother. Mother's mother's mother's. To her mother too's on her on. Fengzhou sighed softly and said, Yu, be good. Mother is doing this for your own good. You saw what happened today. This isn't the first time, and it won't be the last. If you follow Mother, sooner or later, you'll encounter danger again. Yu listened to her and didn't say anything. Hao and Mu Qin, who were standing at the side, lowered their heads and closed their eyes. It was unknown what they were thinking. Chapter 46-78. The masked man curled his lips when he heard the word master from the little girl's mouth. He smiled and said, Little girl, it seems that you will only call me master when you need my help. Unfortunately, even I am unable to fulfill your request. Why can't you do it? Didn't you say you were very powerful? Yu asked. He chuckled. No matter how powerful I am, I can't block the light of her star of the phoenix. If I bring her up to the immortal realm, it will really be a mess up there. He looked at Fengzhou and said, Although I can't bring you up there, you can ascend on your own in the future. By then, you should have the ability to fight with those people. You will only be useful when you ascend. If you ascend now, you can only flee everywhere. Just help me protect the 3 children. I don't need to trouble you with anything else. If I want to ascend, I will naturally be able to do so. There's no need to rush, Fengzhou said. He looked at him and said, 2 days. You can take them with you in 2 days. Okay. He didn't say much and directly agreed. In the next 2 days, Fengzhou spent most of his time with the 3 children. He taught them some things and gave them some things to store in their space as a precaution. They especially cherished the time they had left together. However, no matter how reluctant they were, the day had finally arrived. Early in the morning, the flying ship was still slowly flying. Everyone on the ship gathered at the bow and looked at the masked man and the 3 children. Mother, what should we do when we miss you in the future? Yu threw herself into Fengzhou's arms with tears in her eyes. Although Hao and Mu Qin didn't say anything, their eyes were also red. They stood quietly at the side and looked at their mother as if they wanted to engrave her face in their minds. It's okay. When you get there, listen to your master's words and cultivate. After sending you off, I will also go into seclusion for a period of time. When the time is right, I will prepare to ascend. When everything is settled, I will personally look for you. She said softly, comforting their young and uneasy hearts. Mother, what about Father? Will Father come with Mother to find us? Mu Qin couldn't help but ask. We will. Mother and your father will come to look for you. So before that, you must be obedient and don't run around. Take good care of yourselves and don't distract mother and father." Fengjiu held his hand and then Hao-er's. He put their hands together and said, "You three siblings must support each other and grow up safely." "Yes, yes. Mother, we understand. We will definitely be obedient." The three of them nodded heavily as they spoke, their eyes full of seriousness. "You can keep this item. Maybe it can help you in the future." The masked man handed something to Fengjiu. It looked like a seal, but it also looked like an immortal tool. Fengjiu did not refuse and took it with both hands. "Thank you. In the future, the three children will have to trouble you." "Okay, then we will go first. In the future, we will meet in the immortal realm." As he spoke, he glanced at Fengjiu and formed an ancient seal with both hands. He pointed at the three children's eyebrows. With a flash of golden light, the three children disappeared. Chapter 46-79. Fengjiu stared blankly as the golden light disappeared into the sky along with the three children. Her heart was filled with reluctance and disappointment. She stood at the bow of the ship and watched silently for a long time before returning to the cabin. "I'm going to rest for a bit, call me when we reach Heavenly Mountain." Du Fan, Ling Hua, and Ling Shuang sighed in their hearts. They also couldn't bear for the three little masters to leave, but they also knew that leaving was the best option for them. In the upper immortal realm, in a palace, four great experts were sitting together discussing matters. "Didn't you say that Fengjiu was sent to the demon realm? Why did I hear that the demon king sent her back? What the hell is going on? Did you not send someone to investigate?" A man in black robes who looked to be in his 30s asked in a deep voice. His eyes were as sharp as a blade, making it hard for others to look straight at him. Who knew that the demon king would be so cowardly? He didn't even dare to take revenge after seeing the demon empress killed, and instead sent Fengjiu's group away. Another person frowned, his dignified face filled with displeasure. What a waste of such a good opportunity. Fengjiu is the destined phoenix star, how could she die so easily in the demon realm? In my opinion, Fengjiu's life should be taken by us, others can't be counted on. The one who spoke was a middle-aged man. He stood up with his hands behind his back and looked at the other three. "Just wait. There will always be a chance to take her life. That Xianyuan Mose, didn't he die in our hands?" Speaking of that Xianyuan Mose, it said that the spiritual energy in that world hasn't completely dissipated, and is still gradually solidifying. "I'm afraid that Xianyuan Mose isn't dead yet, perhaps he's still recuperating somewhere, waiting for an opportunity." Another person frowned and thought, if that's the case, then it's a bit troublesome. The other person took a sip of the spirit tea and said disapprovingly, "What trouble? If they want to ascend, they'll have to go through 81 heavenly lightning bolts. Are we afraid we won't have a chance to interfere? No matter how strong they are, can they be stronger than the four of us?" That's true. However, the growth of the two of them is too shocking. If they are allowed to grow, they will become the rulers of the world. At that time, how can we still have the status of the four great emperors? A mere little cultivator from the lower realms. Even if he controls a part of the world, if he dares to compete with us, we will naturally not tolerate him. The middle-aged man snorted, "If they want to ascend, we'll have to see if they have the ability." They looked at each other and smiled at the same time. They picked up their teacups and took a sip. One of them said, "That's right. We are the almighty beings of the world and the great emperors of the four directions. How difficult is it for us to take the lives of those two? If we want them to live, they won't die. If we want them to die, they won't live either. Ha 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 ha." Well said. Come, let me use tea in place of wine to toast you all. Another person laughed heartily and toasted them with a cup of spirit tea. Chapter 4680. They drank spiritual tea and chatted for a while. When they stood up and were about to leave, one of them suddenly stopped and looked back at the three of them. Speaking of which, it seems that there hasn't been much news about Emperor Qing of Cloud Sky Mountain recently. He has never interacted with us, and we haven't paid much attention to him. Why did you suddenly mention him? Another person asked. I just feel like I haven't seen him for a long time. Last year, the South Sea Emperor held a banquet, but I didn't see him. Emperor Qing has always thought highly of himself and never interacted with us. Moreover, I heard that his beloved disciple failed to pass the tribulation and was reduced to ashes. I don't think he'll come out easily. Although we haven't fought against him, I've always heard people say that Emperor Qing is the strongest among all the great emperors. Especially after he came out of seclusion a few years ago, his strength increased greatly. One of them had a serious expression. He sighed softly and said, but fortunately, he doesn't care about the affairs of all the great emperors and has always been a lone wolf. This is good. He won't get in our way. When they heard this, they nodded and didn't say anything else as they walked out. Emperor Qing's strength was unfathomable, but he was also someone who didn't care about the outside world. Since he wouldn't get in their way, they naturally wouldn't pay too much attention to him. Right now, they still had to deal with Fengzhou. The two titles of the Star of the Phoenix and the Master of the World were really a big threat to them. And the person they were afraid of had already arrived at the foot of Sky Mountain in a spaceship. Fengzhou looked at the snow-white Sky Mountain and said to Du Fan and the others, wait for me here. I'll go up and take a look. As she spoke, she got out of the spaceship and headed up the mountain. However, what she didn't expect was that when she stepped into the boundary of Sky Mountain and wanted to go up the mountain, she found that she couldn't. Looking at the boundary that appeared because of her touch, her eyes moved slightly and she stopped in her tracks. Only then did she notice that the entire Sky Mountain was covered by the boundary. The powerful boundary was like a transparent cover that protected Sky Mountain. She stared at it in a daze and for a moment, she was a little lost. Was it because of Tian Jizi's death that the boundary of Sky Mountain was activated? Or was it because of something else? Is Mo Chen still on Sky Mountain? Or had he already ascended to become an immortal? Questions surfaced in her mind one after another. However, she didn't forcefully break through the barrier. Instead, she paused for a moment before turning around and walking towards the spaceship. Not long after Fengzhou left, Du Fan and the others also discovered the barrier that had appeared on Tianshan Mountain. Just as they were feeling surprised, they saw their master return. Master, are we unable to go up? Du Fan asked. Fengzhou shook his head and said, they set up a barrier. I think they don't want anyone to go up. Hearing this, they looked at each other. In the end, Linghua asked, Master, where are we going next? Fengzhou looked at the sky, pondered for a moment, and said, go back. Next, I need to find a place to cultivate in seclusion. Investigate and see if you can find out where Mose is. If you have any news, inform me. Chapter 4681. In a certain part of the sea, Xianyuan Mose, who was nowhere to be found, was sleeping in the deep sea. He was surrounded by unfathomable seawater, and his whole body seemed to be surrounded by a bubble. He lay quietly in it, motionless. His breath was extremely weak, as if he was dead. In the deep sea, there were some spiritual fish and sea monsters swimming in the depths of the sea. However, they all naturally avoided the place where Xianyuan Mose was. The bubble on his body was suffused with a gentle light, and its breath was extremely strong. The bubble was suffused with a layer of faint cyan light. In the deep sea, if one did not look carefully, they would not be able to detect it. Those spiritual fish and sea monsters in the deep sea did not dare to approach Xianyuanmo's. However, the spiritual breath in the sea seeped into his body, and he did not feel it at all. He just lay there quietly, sleeping. In the immortal world, at Cloud Sky Mountain, the three children were sleeping in a thatched hut. Perhaps it was the sunlight outside that shone in. Who was on the bed, opened his eyes and sat up. When he saw the simple and crude thatched hut, he was startled for a moment as if he had thought of something. After a while, he came back to his senses. Mu-chin and Mu-yu, who were on the other two beds, rubbed their eyes and sat up as well. "Big brother. What's wrong?" Yu-er asked. Because she had just woken up, her hair was a little messy. However, even her messy hair made her delicate little face look adorable. "Nothing. I just thought that I should get up and cultivate." Hao-er said and looked at the sky outside. The morning sun was gentle and warm. It was very comfortable. He got out of bed and said to the two, "You two also get up and wash up. We will go outside to cultivate." "Okay." The two little ones responded and got up to wash up. After a simple wash, Yu-er came to find Hao-er with messy hair. "Big brother, help me tie my hair." Hao had just stretched his muscles and bones, and after hearing the sound, he turned around. Seeing Yu-er with messy hair coming over, he walked over and said, "Yu-er, big brother will teach you how to tie it yourself." "Yu-er, properly learn how to tie it, okay?" Hearing this, Yu-er raised her head and looked at him, then finally nodded her head, "Okay." Yu-er is so obedient. Hao-er smiled and praised her. He then led her back to the room and had her sit in front of the bronze mirror while teaching her how to tie her hair. Yu-er also earnestly watched and learned. Merely, she couldn't help but ask, "Big brother, how come we haven't seen our master since he came back? How could he just leave us here and not care about us? Does he not want us anymore? If he doesn't want us, will he send us back to mother?" Hearing this, Mu-chin also listened attentively. Ever since they came back, they had not seen the person who brought them here and said that he was their master. Moreover, they had been thrown here to live in the thatched hut for a few days. Other than the three of them, there was no one else here. Chapter 4682. Mu-chin and Mu-yu looked outside, and when they saw the Baifeng divine bird, they didn't say anything. These days, they indeed didn't see their unreliable master, but this divine bird has been guarding them here, and also brought them some spirit feather chicken as food. "Well, Yu-er, do you know how to tie it?" Hao-er looked at her and asked. Yu-er looked at her and nodded with a smile, and Yu-er knows how to tie it. Moreover, Yu-er also knows how to braid it. Later on, Yu-er will tie her own hair. "And, that's good, let's go. Let's go outside to cultivate," he said to the two. "Okay." The two followed him out and went to the open space outside, and followed him to learn each and every move. The Baifeng divine bird, which had been flying in the sky for a while, glanced down at them, then landed on another mountain not far away, watching the three of them gesticulating. At noon, that Baifeng divine bird on the mountain seemed to have sensed something, and looked towards the direction of the main peak, and with a flap of its wings, it flew towards that direction. And at that main peak, the stone door of an immortal's cave slowly opened, and a white figure walked out from inside. His steps were steady and elegant, and along with his walk, his white robe slightly fluttered, as if his body carried an immortal aura, making people unconsciously hold their breath, as if they were afraid of alarming the immortal in the mountain. Other than his outstanding immortal temperament, his appearance was also extremely outstanding. His unforgettable appearance could be said to be a banished immortal. However, his immortal aura was like that of a banished immortal, but because of his pair of peach blossom eyes, it added a bit of evil. His entire body exuded an aura that was both good and evil. His black hair was casually draped over his shoulders, and there wasn't even a hair band to tie his hair, just casually and naturally draped over his shoulders. As he walked out of the immortal's cave, he looked at the sky, and saw that Baifeng divine bird had returned to his side. He then hooked his lips and asked, "How are those 3 little guys?" "They came to look for you after they woke up, but they have been cultivating by themselves for the past few days. They tried to run around, but I stopped them. I let them move around the thatched hut." "Master, do you want to see them?" the Baifeng divine bird asked, tilting its head to look at him. "It's time to meet them. Go and bring them here," he said as he slowly walked to the stone table under the big tree and sat down. The Baifeng divine bird flapped its wings and flew away. When it came to the 3 children, it stopped beside them and said, "Come on up. I'll take you to see my master." Hearing this, Hao, Mu Qin, and Mu Yu were startled. They looked at each other and jumped onto the back of the divine bird. Their hands tightly grasped the feathers, and their bodies rose up with the divine bird. They looked around and felt the wind blowing against their faces. Therefore, they closed their eyes. After a while, they felt the Baifeng bird stop. "We're here. Come down." As the Baifeng bird said, it squatted down and let the 3 children down. The 3 of them looked around, and their eyes naturally fell on the person sitting under the tree. For a moment, the 3 of them were slightly startled because they felt that this person didn't look like the master who brought them here. Chapter 4683. Hearing this, the Qing Emperor tilted his head slightly, glanced at her, and laughed in spite of himself. "Little girl, have you forgotten your master?" He turned around, raised his hand, and swept the surroundings, saying, "Then look around, do you feel the slightest bit familiar?" After hearing his words, Yu-Er's eyes widened, and her pair of big eyes seemed to be able to speak as she stared at him. After a long while, her soft voice was filled with surprise as she said, "Master. It doesn't look like it. Although that strange master always wears a mask, I can also recognize that he doesn't look like you. Besides, this is the first time I've come here, so how can I feel that it's familiar?" The Qing Emperor smiled and said, "That body was only used when I descended to the mortal world, and it wasn't my real body. This is my real body. Your mother already knew about this matter, but because her spirit was somewhat unstable after she came back, she had to rest for a few days. So, you're the master that we've worshipped." Yu-Er blinked her eyes, still staring at him. She felt that her master's pair of eyes were very good-looking. It was as if he had been smiling all along, making her unable to help but want to smile along with him. "And, it's the real deal." He chuckled, glanced at the 3 of them, and said, 3 days later, Master will remove the blood curse on your body. At that time, your contracted beasts that are suppressed will also wake up. However, Master wants to tell you that you also know that you're in a dangerous situation. There are many people outside who want to take your lives, and even use you to threaten your mother. You 3 little troublemakers have been handed over to me by your mother. In the future, you must listen to Master's words, and don't provoke unnecessary trouble. And the 3 of them nodded and responded. In addition, Qingming Emperor is Master's honorific name. People outside call me Emperor Qing. You must remember, from now on, if anyone asks who your master is, you must say that Qingming Emperor of Cloud Sky Mountain is your master. Master's name outside can also protect you from being bullied by various experts," he said indifferently, looking at the three children. Seeing that they were listening seriously, he was very satisfied. The corners of his mouth slightly curled up, and a trace of a smile appeared in his eyes. We understand," the three of them earnestly said, secretly remembering what he had said. "Also, now that you're under my tutelage, you don't need to use your previous names. I'll give you new names. In the future, when you're outside, you can just use the names I've given you. As for your original names, you must remember not to mention them. Otherwise, you'll get yourself killed. Do you understand?" he continued. "Master." The three of them. "Use, Master." You, curiously. "And." When he said the name Yunqi, his eyes slightly flashed, and he looked towards you. This little girl was crooking her head and muttering the name Yunqi. Seeing this, his eyes couldn't help but soften. "Thank you, Master." "How?" and Muqin said in unison. They knew that if they changed their names, no one would know that their parents were Xianyuanmos and Fingzhou in the future. Chapter 4684. Yes, you'll be called Yunqi. From now on, I'll call you Little Qi. He smiled as if he was in a very good mood. His entire person looked very happy. Hao glanced at him and felt that the name he gave their little sister was a little strange. Moreover, when he called her by her name, his expression was much gentler. Thinking about how he treated their little sister differently during this period of time and the current situation, he suppressed the doubts in his heart and did not ask. Compared to him, he trusted their mother's judgment more. Since their mother allowed them to acknowledge him as their master and follow him here, it was enough to prove that this person could be trusted. Alright, next, I'll tell you about the situation here. He looked at the three children and said, "As you can see, there's no one else here other than you three. Therefore, you have to take care of your own food, clothing, housing, and transportation here. This Cloud Sky Mountain is protected by a boundary array, so outsiders can't enter. Similarly, you can't leave either." He looked at the three of them and walked slowly with his hands clasped behind his back. His lips curled up slightly as he said, "However, there are also spiritual medicine fields and spiritual fruit trees in this mountain. The ones that usually take care of the spiritual fruit trees and spiritual medicine fields are all puppets that I made. In this mountain, other than my cave residence, Little Seven's cave residence is ready-made. As for the two of you, you can go back and see which place you like and dig your own cave residence. The stone tables and chairs in the cave residence can also be cut down in the forest behind the mountain to make them. In here, you have to do everything by yourself." Of course. Of course, of course." He paused and looked at the three of them. "If you learn how to make puppets, you can also let the puppets help you do these things. Every half a year, I'll give you a small test, and every year, a big test. I'll bring you out to spar with other people. After 2 days, after the blood curse in your body is removed, I'll accompany you down the mountain and take you to the city to buy some things you need. You can prepare and see what you need to buy. In the future, you can leave the mountain once every 3 months, but I'll only take you this time. In the future, when you go down the mountain, you have to go by yourself." "Master, then can we go anywhere we want in the entire Cloud Sky Mountain?" The little girl blinked her beautiful big eyes and looked at him excitedly. "Yes, you can naturally go to Cloud Sky Mountain as you wish." Emperor Qing nodded and said to her, "Let's go. Master will bring you to take a look at your cave." "Okay." You excitedly answered, then hurriedly pulled her 2 brothers and followed him towards the immortal cave. Following their master, they arrived at an immortal cave. Upon entering that immortal cave, Mu Chen and Yu were slightly surprised, because this immortal cave looked as if someone had lived here before. Everything inside was very complete. Moreover, at the side of this immortal cave, there was also a small kitchen. Master, who used to live here? Hao asked as he looked at the Qing Emperor, who was looking around the cave abode with his hands behind his back. This is the place where your senior sister used to live in the past. However, she failed to cross the tribulation and turned into ashes. Since then, this place has always been empty. Cyan Emperor said. He looked at Yu and said, "Little girl, you will live here in the future." Chapter 4685. Okay, from now on, you will live here. He rubbed her head and said to her, "Take a look and see if you are lacking anything. After a few days, we will go down the mountain to buy it." Okay. Yu was all smiles as she answered. Hao looked at him and asked, "Master, can you teach us how to make puppets first?" They were still young, so many things were much more difficult for them to do by themselves. If they had puppets, it would be a lot more convenient. Qing Emperor glanced at him and walked out with his hands behind his back. He said, "You all, come with me." They followed him to the side of the stone table outside the cave. Seeing him take out several pieces of talisman paper, he took out cinnabar and a brush and placed them on the table. He said to them, "First, I will teach you how to use talisman to make puppets. For now, it will be easier for you to learn. Look carefully." He glanced at them and picked up the brush. After dipping it in cinnabar, he drew a rune on the talisman paper. He stopped writing and said to them, "Draw according to this rune. You must finish it in one stroke. When you lift the brush, you must pour your spiritual energy into the brush." "Master, can this be used as a puppet?" Yu curiously looked at that talisman paper. Qing Emperor picked up that talisman paper, activated the talisman, and lightly threw it out. After that talisman landed on the ground, it transformed into a handsome young man. Seeing this, the three children couldn't help but open their eyes wide. Their eyes were full of amazement. "Go boil a pot of water and make a cup of tea," Qing Emperor instructed. That young puppet complied and turned around to prepare to boil water and make tea. Master, how did you do it?" "So awesome," Yu excitedly said. She stepped forward and said, "I also want to learn, I also want to learn." Qing Emperor smiled and said, "When you draw a talisman paper and activate it, you only need to think about what you want this puppet to look like, and it will transform according to your thoughts. However, this kind of talisman puppet has a time limit. In the future, when you learn how to make high-level puppets, you only need to stuff some crystal stones on it, and it will always listen to your orders. Moreover, it will also be a very good fighter." He stood up, brushed his robe, and said, "Okay, you all can learn first." He took out some talisman paper from the space and gave it to them. He also took out 2 talisman brushes and some cinnabar. Then, he walked to a cool place. With a wave of his hand, a soft couch appeared in front of him, and he lay on it to rest. Although Mu Chen and Mu Yu were young, they were gifted and had always been intelligent and wise. On the other hand, they practiced. Mu and Chapter 4686. Mu Chen's eyes lit up with joy when he saw that his brother had finished drawing the talisman. He looked at his brother with adoration. In his heart, he secretly made up his mind to draw seriously and learn as soon as possible. Hao looked at the person who appeared with a smile on his little face. "Yes, I've learned it. Let me teach you." He stepped forward and stood beside the two. Let's stop here for today. It's getting dark and you've practiced for the whole afternoon. Continue tomorrow. Emperor Qing walked over and looked at the three. Do you want to eat fasting pills or roast chicken? Master, do you have rice? I want to eat porridge. Yu whispered. No. He shook his head and looked at the little girl's disappointed expression. Remember to buy some spirit rice when you go down the mountain in 2 days. You can also let the puppets plant spirit rice in the spiritual fields on the mountain. Okay. Then we'll buy some seeds and bring them back. She suddenly perked up and smiled with her eyes narrowed. Today, they ate roast chicken in the end. Because Hao and Mu Qin didn't have a cave residence yet, they went back to sleep in the thatched cottage. Yu didn't want to live in a cave residence alone, so she also slept in the thatched cottage with them. The next morning, Hao drew a talisman early in the morning and summoned a puppet to help him open up a cave residence. He and Mu Qin chose a place not far from Yu so that the three of them could keep each other company. After arranging for the puppet to open up the cave residence, he came back to teach Mu Qin and Mu Yu how to draw talismans. It should be like this. Look, this is how you draw it. He held a brush and carefully taught. You must inject your spiritual aura into the tip of the brush. Only with the cinnabar on the tip of the brush will the runes have spiritual aura. Big brother, do you think mine looks like it? Mu Qin picked up his own drawing and showed it to him. It's done. This is already a talisman, and it's a second-level one. Hao smiled and praised. Mu Qin is amazing. Because there was no one else in the mountain, they remembered the names their master had given them. They would use them when they left the mountain in the future. When there was no one else in the mountain, they would still use their old names out of habit. Big brother is the best. He's drawing third-level talismans. Mu Qin said, if I continue to draw, I can also draw third-level talismans. Yes, definitely. Hao nodded. While both of them were talking, Yu earnestly drew a talisman. Merely, the talisman she drew was somewhat crooked, moreover, it was also relatively small. But she compared the talisman drawn by their master, and finally determined that the talisman she drew was not wrong. Big brother, look, I've also drawn it. I'm also a second-rank talisman. She happily revealed a smiling face, and waved the talisman in her hand. On the other side, the three of them practiced the talisman for the entire morning. After familiarizing themselves with it, they let the puppet do some work for them. The three of them planned to take the opportunity to walk around Cloud Sky Mountain and familiarize themselves with the various environments here. At the main peak, when Emperor Qing learned that the three of them had already learned how to draw the puppet talisman, his pair of peach blossom eyes curved, and a hint of an expectant smile appeared on his handsome face. Chapter 4687. The Bifong bird, who was lying at the side, didn't even raise its head when it heard his words. It said, these three people are originally from extraordinary backgrounds, so it's to be expected that they have outstanding talents. Their parents are Xianyuan Mose and Fengzhou. How stupid can their children be? We didn't meet Xianyuan Mose this time, but Fengzhou is indeed not an ordinary person. It's only a matter of time before she becomes an immortal. Those people can't stop her. Emperor Qing said slowly as he looked at the sky and narrowed his eyes. On this day, Hao, Mu Qin, and Mu Yu walked around the entire Cloud Sky Mountain and familiarized themselves with each mountain. At the same time, they also saw the spiritual herbs and some spiritual fruit trees planted in the spiritual fields. They also knew that the entire Cloud Sky Mountain was just as their master had said. Other than the three of them, there was only their master and the Bifong bird. The rest were at most puppets. Big brother, why don't you think Master lives alone in such a big place, but he doesn't take in many disciples like others? Wouldn't there be people to work for him? Yu asked curiously as she walked while holding her two brothers' hands. Hao held her little hand. As they walked, he said, Master's personality is mild. He has his reasons for not wanting to open a sect and accept disciples. As his disciples, we shouldn't ask too much about things that we shouldn't. Sometimes, knowing too much isn't beneficial. Big brother, Master will help us break the blood curse tomorrow. I'm a little worried. Mu-chin lowered his head and looked at the ground as he walked step by step. Hao gazed at him and said, There's no need to worry. Master's strength is very strong. Moreover, Mother entrusted us to him and allowed us to take Master as our master. So, he's someone that Mother trusts. So, we have to trust him no matter what he does. Don't worry. Master will definitely break the blood curse. Hearing this, Mu-chen nodded in agreement. Hearing this, Yu smiled and said, After breaking the blood curse, Master will let us go down the mountain. Big brother, have you thought about what to buy? Without waiting for the two to speak, she smiled and said, I want to buy seeds. I want the puppet to help me grow spirit rice. In the future, we will have spirit rice to eat. I also want to buy a lot of things. Are you going to buy a pot or something? When we cook in the future, we will have to buy those, right? Mu-chin said and looked at Yu. There seems to be a pot in the small kitchen, but we can buy new ones and put some in the space. The three of them chatted as they walked towards the thatched hut. Perhaps because they had company, the three siblings were always together. Therefore, although they were away from their mother's side, as the days passed, they gradually got used to it. The next morning, they woke up early and washed up. Then, they went to their master's abode on the main peak to wait. Today was the day their master would remove the blood curse for them. They were a little nervous, but also a little expectant. Hao was fine because the blood curse on him had been broken long ago. Today, it was mainly Mu-chin and Mu-yu. However, what they didn't expect was that even though they had arrived early, their master slept until close to noon before waking up. Come in. Chapter 4688. The inside of the cave residence was very big. Although it was called a cave residence, it was more like a small palace. Moreover, there were several smaller caves, each separated by a certain distance. The walls of the cave residence were illuminated by luminous pearls. There was also fresh air flowing in the cave residence. Obviously, there were other exits. What are you waiting for? Come here. Emperor Qing gestured for the two younger ones to come forward. Mu-chin and Mu-yu walked forward and stopped in front of him. They looked at him, not knowing how he was going to help them break the blood curse. Emperor Qing glanced at the two standing in front of him and reached out to feel their pulse. After checking for a while, he stood up and walked to one of the caves. He said to the two of them, You two, come with me. Seeing this, Mu-chin and Mu-yu hurriedly followed. Hao wanted to follow in to take a look but was stopped. There are some books in the first cave on the left. Go in and take a look. You don't have to follow. You can't go in, and you can't help even if you come in. Emperor Qing said without looking back. Hao stopped and stood there watching them enter the cave. Although he was worried, it was just as their master had said. He wouldn't be of much help even if he went in. Therefore, he paused for a moment and walked towards the first cave on the left. Pushing open the stone door, it opened with a creak. After he walked in, the stone door closed. At that moment, it was as if the sound outside was isolated. He looked around and saw that there was a soundproof barrier set up inside. Thus, he gathered his thoughts and walked towards the bookshelves. There were 10 rows of bookshelves filled with books. He went forward to take a look and picked up a book on the mental cultivation methods shelf. He opened it and couldn't help but be surprised. This was a top-notch mental cultivation method book. It was divided into the 5 elements. He flipped through it and put it back. Then he walked to the back and picked up another book to read. This was a sword technique book. When he opened the book, some of the sword technique pictures shocked him. He felt that it was extremely exquisite, and for a moment, he couldn't help but be immersed in it. While he was reading the manual, he accidentally lost track of time. While he was engrossed in it, his hands began to move uncontrollably. After an unknown amount of time, the stone door was pushed open and his master was standing outside. Only then did he regain his senses. He hurriedly put the sword back and hurried forward. Slightly worried, he asked, "Shirzuan, how are the 2 of them?" He looked behind him, but didn't see Mu Qin and Mu Yu. The blood curse has been broken, but they have fainted from the pain and are now sleeping in the cubicle. Emperor Qing said with his hands clasped behind his back. His face was paler than before, as if he had consumed a lot of spiritual energy to help them break the blood curse. The exhaustion between his eyebrows could not be concealed. "Master, how are you? Are you okay? Do you want to rest for a while? I'll get you a glass of water." Hao-er also noticed that his face was paler than before, so he quickly went to the stone table outside and poured a cup of water for him. Emperor Qing glanced at him and didn't refuse. Instead, he reached out to take the water and drank it. Then he handed the empty cup to him and said, "You don't have to worry about the 2 of them. The blood curse has been broken. Let them sleep and they will be awake tomorrow. Go and see them. But don't wake them up. I also need to rest." Chapter 4689. Seeing this, Hao hurriedly went to the previous stone room to take a look. As soon as he entered, he saw Mu Qin and Mu Yu lying side by side on the stone bed. Their clothes were soaked with sweat and tightly stuck to their bodies. They seemed to be enduring severe pain. Their lips were slightly bitten by them, and their hair was also soaked with sweat and stuck together. The sweat on their forehead was also not yet dry. He didn't dare to wake them up, so he quietly looked after them for a while. He took out a handkerchief to help them wipe the sweat on their body, and secretly used his spiritual power to help them dry their clothes. Only then did he accompany them. They slept until the next morning before waking up. Mu Qin woke up first and saw his elder brother lying on the bed sleeping. Just as he was about to get out of bed, Yu-er also woke up. "How did elder brother fall asleep here?" Yu-er rubbed her eyes and asked while yawning. She had just woken up and her little face was still confused, as if she still didn't remember what happened yesterday. "You're awake." Hao-er also woke up at this time. Looking at them, he quickly asked, "How do you feel? Are you feeling better?" "Qilin." Mu Qin suddenly called, and with a flash of light, Qilin Beast appeared in front of them. Brothers Qilin came out, "Then can I also call out my little spirit fox?" Yu said in surprise, and quickly called out, "Little spirit fox, quickly come out." As soon as she finished speaking, the 9-tailed spirit fox appeared with a whoosh. It landed on the bed and looked around. It stretched and said, "Master, the blood curse on your body has been removed. That thing has been pressing down on us. We can't get out." "Great. The blood curse is really removed." Yu happily clapped her hands and quickly got out of bed, saying, "Today Master will take us down the mountain to buy things, right?" Let's go find Master now. After Master helped you to remove the blood curse yesterday, I saw his complexion was somewhat pale. I don't know if he is better today. How said, but he didn't stop you from walking out. Who would have thought that when they came out of the stone room, they saw their master sitting at the stone table, drinking tea and reading a book. Master! 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 You quickly stepped forward, and with a happy face, she walked in front of him. Hao and Mu-chin, on the other hand, stood a little further away. They bowed respectfully and called out to him before standing aside. Emperor Qing glanced at the nine-tailed fox and the Qilin beast and said to them, "Take your contracted beasts back. Don't let them appear in front of others unless it is absolutely necessary." Seeing this, the two of them hurriedly recalled their contracted beasts back into the space. Master, are we going down the mountain now? Can we go down the mountain to eat something? You asked with a smile. The Azure Supreme the Arch glanced at them and stretched out his hand to brush the three of them. The three of them felt a cool breeze blow past them. It was as if something had been taken away from their bodies, and they instantly felt refreshed. This wasn't the horsetail whisk technique. Master, what is this technique? You curiously asked. This is similar to the horsetail whisk technique. The difference is that the horsetail whisk technique only removes the dust and dirt on your clothes, but the cleansing technique makes you feel as if you have just taken a bath and changed your clothes. It can save you the trouble of taking a bath and changing your clothes, Emperor Qing said unhurriedly. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.